Hello everyone, James Stephanie Sterling here, and welcome to another edition of the Jimquisition, which you're all going to have to go off and watch on your own, because I'm playing this. And it's more important than all of y'all, so skedaddle. Actually, this is quite relevant to the video, in a roundabout way. We will get to it eventually. Seriously, fuck off! Hey, hey, hey! It's time to make some crazy money! No, that's not just something Bobby Kotick has to say before he's able to come. It's also the historic opening gambit of Sega's beloved arcade and Dreamcast classic, Crazy Taxi. If you're too young to remember Crazy Taxi, there's no point me addressing you because you're watching far more relevant and popular YouTube channels rather than hanging out here with all the clapped out decaying mummies who still consider S Club 7 to be recent music. Which it is, by the way. Reach for the Stars is a contemporary song, and Nightmare is still the pinnacle of special effects in television media.
So boulders crack and that ledge crumble! Nice of you to drop in.
Oh dear, what a pity, never mind.
Anyway, video games. Released in arcades in 1999 before heading over to Sega's critically acclaimed and commercially piss-wrecked 6th gen console in 2000, the Crazy Taxi is a hectic game about giving time-sensitive rides to the most late 90s looking motherfuckers imaginable. Critically acclaimed for its entertainingly chaotic gameplay and, more crucially, its absolutely appalling soundtrack.
Seriously, people absolutely adore the music in this game despite not one single S Club 7 track being featured.
Over the years, it's had obligatory sequels, quite a few ports, and a pair of mobile games that completely missed the point of the series' appeal and obviously existed for the sake of monetization, because I'm bringing this up today because I found out just moments ago that a new Crazy Taxi game is happening. I missed the announcement at the game advertisements last year because, well, I don't watch them. But I was rather amused by the fact I became incredibly interested and incredibly disinterested at the same time, thanks to the headline that brought it to my attention. Sega's new Crazy Taxi game, AAA in scope. Wow, that's off-putting. Published by Eurogamer via the furtive fingers of Tom Phillips, I gotta say, he had me at Sega's new Crazy Taxi game, and he lost me at AAA in scope. It's very much a game of two halves, this headline. While promising that a game will be AAA in scope doesn't really mean a fucking thing, and says exactly Jack Cunny flaps about how good or big said game will actually be, I am still nonetheless so off-put by the promise of AAA-ness that my interest in the new Crazy Taxi was birthed and killed in the space of several seconds. And I really cannot emphasize enough how meaningless the term AAA scope is. As Eurogamer says, the upcoming return of Crazy Taxi will be a AAA game, Sega has said. Sega first announced it was making a long-awaited new Crazy Taxi title in December last year as part of a new wave of entries in many of its classic series. Wait a minute. What have I Golden Axe? I've not heard this. Now, a Japan Times interview has shed more light on its scope and revealed it is being worked on in part by Sega's relatively new Sapporo studio, which was founded in the capital of Japan, Hokkaido Prefecture, in December 2021. Sounds like it only contributes to the game, yada yada yada. Nothing! The story is a nothing burger of the most oxygenated flavour, centred around a promise that somehow means even less than nothing. And yet I want to talk about it. Or rather, I want to talk around it, using the subject matter as a flimsy excuse to shit-talk a bunch of video game companies as usual, while ultimately praising the absolute shit out of a driving game that came out a few days ago and demonstrates superbly how equating so-called AAA games with scope, as if the two are inherently and maybe even exclusively associated, is complete and total bollocks. Oh, and here's a spoiler. We're going to be talking about Pacific Drive later, and it's a fucking great game. We've been talking a bit about the term AAA recently, specifically the fact that publishers are so desperate to lend their products an artificial sense of pedigree, they've taken to calling games quadruple A now, a level of vulgar exaggeration that should intellectually offend anyone intelligent enough to be able to take offense at things. Considering 90% of this show is about how self-styled AAA publishers are ethically depraved financial vampires, obviously I'm going to rebuke any attempt to make the vapidly arrogant label a selling point. While the term may have once had a very specific meaning with regards to a game's budget and scale, these days it just means any reasonably marketed game pumped out with wildly varying degrees of quality by corporations that are, consistently and without exception, a bunch of predatory, abusive cunts. See, as I've argued before, AAA is not a measurement of scale or quality. AAA is a state of mind. It's an attitude rather than a label with any practical definition. You look at the publishers at the forefront of the AAA gaming space, your Activisions, your EAs, your Ubisofts, your Warner fucking Brothers, and they're all churning out the same type of shit with the same overall goal of making not just some money, but all the money in the world by any means necessary. AAA is not high-scale, wide-scope, deep and enriching games. It's half-finished live services and microtransaction-fueled exploitative economies. It's multiple special editions. It's season passes, battle passes, and Lilu Dallas multi-passes. This isn't just me being hyperbolic, this is what the blueprint of the modern AAA game is. An attitude towards the making and selling of games that has steadily and insidiously charged more money for less products over a period that's well within its second decade now. We recently had fun mocking Ubisoft's abuse covering CEO Yves Guillemot's claim that his recent game Bulk and Skull deserved to charge $70 because it was a quadruple A game. This was before release, and back then I pretty confidently predicted that the game would in fact be unfinished live service vapidity typified by drearily repetitive gameplay loops and nebulous open world busywork. Well, the reviews are in, and would you believe it? It turns out that a game so steeped in AAA majesty it needed a fourth A is, in fact, unfinished live service vapidity typified by drearily repetitive gameplay loops and nebulous open world busywork. Because of course it is. That's what AAA games are. And a quadruple A game is exactly the same thing, with the only difference being they're calling it quadruple A. Like, I'm looking at these reviews, and if you read some of the critical assessments, they really could have been written about literally any mainstream video game. Combining moody and gratifying ship-on-ship combat with shallow live service trappings. It's great within the claustrophobic parameters of what market forces allow it to be, says PC Gamer. The unfinished framework of a great open world that still needs a lot more content, offers GameStar. Gaming Age calls it a grind-heavy game with not a lot of payoff unless your idea of payoff is being asked to grind some more. You'd think that a game that spent 11 years in development would have more than just one idea repeated ad nauseum, but the evidence here suggests that's really all there is. IGN Portugal offers, there are positive and genuinely enjoyable aspects, such as the combat or the artistic direction, but these are swallowed up by the swamp of live service elements and the time it demands from players. Oh, how about this one? A perfect example of how live services can sap all the energy out of a game experience, admonishes the Sixth Axis. The problem is that cloning the same few basic gameplay mechanics seen in most live service games creates a negative overall experience. As a result, even if playing alongside your friends as a full party, you will feel like participating in a chores marathon. That was said by Softpedia. Oh, and here's vanilla IGN with this insight. Engaging mission design is nearly non-existent, the looter-shooter mechanics are tired and dull, and the grotesquely repetitive post-game leaves little to nothing to do of interest. Finally, Silicon Era sums it up with a perfectly beautiful quote. I personally think that every single gameplay choice they made went in the opposite direction of what I'd consider fun to play, but they wanted to make a live service game, and they made one. Now, this collection of review quotes is interesting for a number of reasons. Firstly, they all pretty much demonstrate that my prediction for Ubisoft's Mulligan and O'Hare was correct. It is yet more copy-pasted open-world service game nonsense from Ubisoft. Secondly, and perhaps this is the most interesting little factoid about these quotes, half of them are about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
What a twist!
Suicide Squad Kill the Just Juice League is another game charging $70, another loot-burdened service game that substitutes well-crafted experiences for an amorphous glob of recycled content. Oh, and the latest patch for this AAA game developed by a AAA studio for a AAA publisher was produced with such AAA professionalism that it literally made the game worse. Since being fixed, Suicide Squad has been plagued with frequent freezes and crashes, you know, the kind of embarrassing story that has sadly become typical in the mainstream gaming space, thanks in no small part to its horrible release now, roadmap later attitude that plagues game production. It's been years now of games getting rushed out to market as broken, half-baked messes, followed by hasty, duct-taped patch jobs, and roadmaps of promised content that don't get fulfilled because the devs have to spend all their post-launch time fixing the fucking game instead of adding to it. AAA, far from being a seal of approval, is quite literally the opposite. It's a seal of fucking shit. If you tell me your game is AAA, I am not going to assume that means it's an expansive, detailed, ambitious, highly polished game. Why would I assume that when history shows that such games are an exception in the so-called AAA space rather than the rule? Why should anybody be excited to see a game willingly placing itself in the same bracket as Gotham Shite, Call of Duty Modern Whatever, Overwatch 2, and Forspoken? It's an especially salient point when the informed merits of AAA are found in considerably smaller games providing infinitely more ambitious experiences. Which brings us back to Crazy Taxi. See, the promise that Crazy Taxi will be AAA in scope really highlights how myopic the language around marketing video games is. But they had no better way to communicate the scale of their goals than comparing Crazy Taxi to literally every game that's ever had the temerity to charge $60 or $70 demonstrates the severe need for a better basis of comparison. In fact, a better basis of comparison already exists, and it is called Pacific fucking Drive. Wait, no, I read that wrong. It's just called Pacific Drive. A few days ago, I started playing Pacific Drive, a survival game in which you drive, obviously, and maintain a car through a paranormal exclusion zone, cataloguing creepy anomalies, collecting materials, crafting an ever-expanding range of upgrades, utilities, and gear, and screaming in panicked terror as storms batter the fuck out of your beloved station wagon and mannequins spawn behind you and explode in your fucking face like someone shoved a fistful of C4 up a weeping angel's arsehole. And it's brilliant. I mean, it's fucking brilliant. I know that some of what I just said there made it sound fucking awful. Yes, fundamentally, it's just another survival game, the kind of which I'm actually incredibly fucking sick of and hate. Yet this one has managed to keep me almost obsessively hooked. These days, I cannot bloody stand the finicky resource management and tedious crafting chores that typify the genre, but thanks to an engrossingly atmospheric world, the relative speed and lack of grind involved with upgrades, mostly, a huge number of optional quality of life settings, and the fact that babysitting a car that gets progressively more personalised is far more rewarding than babysitting your ineffectual player character like every other survival game, Pacific Drive absolutely stands out as an absorbing, spooky driving game that also happens to feature some impeccably funny writing. Oh, and if we're talking about scope, Pacific Drive boasts something far more impressive than AAA scope. It boasts scope. Pacific Drive is not a AAA game. It is developed by Ironwood Studios and published by Kepler Interactive, a collective of distinctly independent game companies. At the time of talking, I have put well over 15 hours into Pacific Drive. At the time of talking, I have completed one story objective in Pacific Drive. Oh, and this was entirely by choice. You can easily enjoy it way faster than I've currently been doing. I just got so mesmerised in exploring the world that I let half a dozen hours go by before I even registered that I'd been achieving zero story progression. And I'm fine with that. Now, it's a big game in terms of geography, but while AAA scope games only ever talk about the raw square footage of their big barren sandpit worlds, Pacific Drive offers depth to go with that width. The car and its various intricacies are detailed and expansive enough to support a video game on their own, to say nothing of the weird mysteries to uncover in the zone, or the huge array of mechanics and systems that enrich but never overcomplicate the experience as a whole. I'll be putting a full-ass review of the game on the Jimquisition.com in due course, I'm sure, but let me call it right now. By the time people are putting putting their Game of the Year lists together at the end of 2024, this one is going to be criminally fucking snubbed because it came out in February despite the fact it's clearly deserving of the plaudits. I am absolutely calling Pacific Drive a Game of the Year contender this early into the calendar. It's just that damn good. And it is a perfect antithesis to the game's Crazy Taxi is being compared to when it should be the comparison itself. Was this whole episode an excuse to shill for Pacific Drive? Yes. Yes, it was. It is a fucking great game, and I've had to stop playing it to come do this, so if I can't play it until I'm done talking, I'm going to talk about it as much as possible. Ultimately though, I'm quite pleased with the point I managed to pull out of this contrivance of a video. Pacific Drive is a beautiful example of the difference between a game with AAA scope and a game with scope. The former refers purely to the amount of cash they can pump into a project, and how large an overworld map they can make as a result. The latter refers to something that's big where it counts. Whether that's the wealth of things to do in its map, the depth of systems, or the brilliance of the writing, or indeed all three or more of these elements. It is high time that AAA developers realised size isn't everything, and that's especially true when it comes to size.
Try red, blue, green and grey.
Red, green, blue, and grey.
No, Chris. No.
What?
Red, blue.
Nasty.
Yeah, I ended up getting one of them PlayStation Portal things. Like, I just saw a second-hand one going for like half the price I see them scalped for. So I bought it. It's here, and it's plastic, and it functions. It turns on and off. And that's my review of the PlayStation Portal. Thank God for me.